All financial support for this podcast comes from my patrons on patreon.com. If you'd like to join in with the patrons, please check out patreon.com/Darwin Gross. That's DARWIN GROSSE. Now enjoy the podcast. Okay, today I get a chance to talk to somebody I've actually known for quite a while. She used to do demos back in the day at the NAMM show. Always looked forward to seeing her up on the Ableton stage. It was a blast getting to see her work. But I've just kind of been around her and around the people that she's worked with over the years. It's been really phenomenal, the extent to which she's affected the world around us. Her name is Laura Escudé, and she's kind of like well known for being the, quote, first certified trainer for Ableton. But she's a person who has really been pretty vocal about getting Ableton used in places outside of traditional production, particularly used a lot in live performance. And so I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to Laura. And so I'll shut up and I'll talk to Laura. Hey, Laura, how's it going?
Hi, Darwin. Thanks so much for having me. Wow, what a nice intro. I'm flattered.
Oh, well, it's, I just remember back in the day, it was like, working the NAMM shows can be so grueling and irritating, but you always put on like a great show. You always brought a lot of energy to the Ableton stand. It was always really great to get a chance to see you in action. So it's kind of cool to be able to look that far back and still, remember your work.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, yeah, that is kind of far back now.
Yeah, it is. Right. I mean, it's like now going to the NAMM show, it's fun to do, but back then it was critical because that was when the magazines would show up to check out what was going to be new and all this stuff, right? Mm. The world of the whole music tech industry has changed so much since then.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Things were definitely not as accessible back then as they are now.
Yeah, so true. So true. Now, why don't we start this off by having you fill people in on some of the stuff you do? I mean, we could spend this first 10 minutes of the thing just literally talking through the laundry list of people that you've worked with and work that you've done. I don't know that that's productive, but I'd like to hear some of what's really cooking for you right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I'm an Ableton certified trainer and used to work at the company and parlayed that into a career for many years as a playback engineer, someone who works behind the scenes at concerts, doing all the music playback for the shows and performing as well during some of those performances and doing my own artistry and live performing and just absolutely obsessed with everything music and technology, high vibrations, and bettering ourselves and just becoming a better human and better person day by day as much as I can. So I also work with artists to help elevate their live performances, and I've got a lot of educational programs around helping those artists to discover their voice in the live performance space and to design their dream live performance. Right now, in this time, I mean, the time that we're speaking right now, it's a very interesting time because
oh my goodness.
we're not able to go out and perform and do shows. And it's April 2020 right now, the time of the virus. And, I was supposed to be working on the show American Idol right now, and that got canceled. And I have a production agency called Electronic Creatives, and we do live show playback for concerts all based around Ableton Live. And every single show of ours is canceled, just like everywhere else in the world. So it's a very interesting time, but it's also kind of cool in a way for me because I'd spent the last couple of years bringing my educational work online. And I spent the last year teaching my course called Transmute about live performance online. And we had people from all over the world joining into this course. And it's a 2-month course to elevate your live performance. So it's kind of neat because I spent all this time live streaming and learning all the tools and techniques to perform online. And here we are, cooped up in our homes, and we're all online. So I've become the go-to person for like, hey, how do I do this? Which software should I use? How can I get
Right.
good sound? And and it's actually pretty fun because I just love helping out my friends in the community to learn new tips and tricks, especially now because it's the paradigm is totally shifted. So recently, in the past month, I've been doing a lot of online master classes, a lot of just free stuff for my community to help them all get in a place where they can perform online and in their studios and get good sound and level up their show. So I've been doing quite a bit of that, and just kind of navigating the rest of it, just like everyone else is in the world, and just trying to be, future focused and look to the future, but also just taking it day by day. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of the synopsis of what I've been doing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, most of what I have known about your work over the last many years is that you kind of had to be a road warrior because you did have this focus on live performance and live show creation, development of the technology behind the live shows and stuff like this. It put you either on the road or in the rehearsal hall with people pretty consistently. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be a huge change for you for that just to
Mm-hmm.
be not a part of your mix at this moment.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, it's not not completely different for me because I quit touring mostly about 4 years ago. Now I do
Oh, okay.
do shows from time to time. Like I still do American Idol, and that's here in Los Angeles, and
Mm-hmm.
that's I don't have to travel for that. I'll do
Right.
awards shows like the Grammys or different shows, or work with artists and get their shows off the ground. But my company, Electronic Creatives, I actually started the company in 2009, but it really started popping in 2011 when I started getting all this work to go out and tour. And I was getting so many calls, I decided to start training people.
Mm-hmm.
So I trained a whole staff to do what I do and go out there and do the music playback for these shows. And so about 4 years ago, I just had like a massive health crisis, and I was just pushing myself too hard. And yeah, it was, it was not cool. I actually wrote a whole article about it on Medium. It's called Hustle Healthier. If anyone listening wants to go check it out, I talk about, the fact that I was touring for so many years. I toured with Kanye West for 7 years and
Right.
a bunch of different artists in between. And my health, it definitely took a toll on my health, and now I'm so much better. But I just got to the point where I decided, I don't want to live this lifestyle anymore. It's great. I just turned 40, so I'm kind of in the next phase of my career where, I want to be mentoring. I want to be doing my artistry and doing different things. And, while it was fun to do that for the better part of 10 years, I just am in a different place right now in my career. So, and especially in the last couple of years, I've just been passing along the gigs that people have asked me to do to my team,
Sure.
and been growing my company.
Right.
So that's been kind of cool to be able to provide opportunities for other people.
Yeah. Now, two of the things though that I've seen kind of active lately is you still are pretty active in developing sort of like your solo performance thing. And
Mm-hmm.
for anybody who gets an opportunity, go over to YouTube and take a peek at some of Laura's solo performances. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It looks like quite a stress ball trying to get all of that stuff happening all at once. But you put on a really great show, and you also are. I mean, it's really clearly a live performance. I mean, you're a violinist. You're clearly adept at a lot of electronic interfacing and stuff, but you really get this connection with somebody performing as opposed to playing along with a track or something. And I think that's pretty amazing. But it also developing that kind of show for yourself has got to be pretty difficult. For you, what is kind of the focal point when you're putting together a solo performance? What is the focal point for you? I mean, do you really do you view yourself more as an instrumentalist, a violinist? Do you think of yourself kind of as a conductor of all this stuff? Do you think of yourself as a performer for people to watch while this other stuff is happening? Or how do you imagine this solo performance thing being, what is the center of that for you?
That's such a great question. Wow, I love how you asked that. My show has been through many different iterations throughout the years, and I went through so many years of kind of getting lumped in with the DJs, right? So, hey, come play our show, and you got to set up your stuff on the DJ decks, and it was challenging because I was trying to like be in that format. I was trying to do more like up tempo electronic music, but it still wasn't like DJ music. And people were like, well, are we supposed to watch you, or are we supposed to dance? Like,
right.
What's going on? And so in the past couple of years, my sound has, changed and evolved quite a bit. And I call my current sound future classical. So it's, the mixture of my classical violin roots with the futuristic kind of crazy synths and bass sounds that I love. And so I've been playing in different formats, more like theaters versus clubs, and doing presentations at like conventions and with companies and different things like that. So it's definitely evolved, and I've added so many different elements. So I love the fact that you asked me if I think I'm the conductor, because I kind of resonated with that one the most. I do consider myself an instrumentalist first and foremost. I am a vocalist as well, but the violin takes the front seat. But I am thinking about so many different things on stage, from the violin to the controllers to the effects to changing presets and sounds to controlling the visuals in real time. I've been working with an artist to create my Unreal gaming engine setup. So I'm actually controlling the video with my violin and converting audio to MIDI in real time and creating modules and nodes and changing colors with the bow pressure of the violin. And so I've been doing quite a bit of this kind of audio visual show for the last couple of years. And so it is very much like I'm conducting the performance. And I really feel like it's special to me. And it's not, it's something that I came up with and just kept morphing throughout the years. I just kept adding different things and trying new things, and depending on what phase I was in my life and what I wanted to say and speak to the audience, because for the most part, it's largely instrumental, and I still want to convey emotions to the audience. I still want to convey how I was feeling when I wrote that music, and to get the audience to get sucked into my world and to really be there with me. And I use technology to do that. And I really firmly believe that technology helps us to express ourselves in ways that we wouldn't be able to normally. Tools like auto-tune, for example. I used to really look down on a tool like auto-tune 10, 15 years ago because I thought it was a crutch.
Right.
And now I think it's amazing, because after working with artists who use it as a tool to express themselves in a way that they wouldn't be able to express themselves to the audience normally. And I just love the fact that technology can allow us to augment our emotions and our feelings on stage.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point. And it's interesting to imagine you like being up behind the DJ decks trying to do your work, because when I've seen you perform and when I watch your videos, the stuff you do has very much like a concert-like quality to it. So it seems like it would be a weird mismatch to have it be like in a club-like setting. And so it's kind of good to hear the direction you're taking it. So one of the things I like doing in my podcast is I like talking to people a little bit about their background, how they got to be the artists that they are. And I'm really curious, because you come to this with like these really high-level skills with violin, but also a clear, not only understanding, but like high level of comfort with the technology. You were in you were in some of these technology worlds even like before it was a common thing to do. So I'm kind of curious, where are you coming from? What is your background? And how did you get to be the artist that you are today?
Oh, wow. Well, how much time do we have? Just kidding.
All the time in the world.
So, I did start out playing violin and did the whole classical music thing and didn't know much else. When I was in high school, I discovered the Dave Matthews Band, and I just had never seen a violinist perform with an electric violin before. And I just fell in love with Boyd Tinsley, the violinist in that band, and just the different sounds that he was making. And I didn't know how to get there, though. I didn't know how to perform like that because I just had read music off of a sheet of paper.
Right.
And then when I went to college, I ended up meeting someone whose boyfriend was a DJ in the electronic music world. And I went to a rave, and I just felt like I'd found my tribe. Like I hadn't experienced this like feeling of inclusiveness and this feeling of community, as well as the music was just incredible and just evoked emotion for me that I'd never felt before. And I just loved dancing. So I started to go to these raves, and I started to talk to DJs about playing violin over the music. And I met a couple of different people that, let me look over their shoulder. And it was very interesting because I was doing bookings for a small club, coffee shop at college. And this band came in to perform. And it turns out it was George Clinton's son's band. Okay. And so I didn't know this, but George Clinton actually lived in Tallahassee, where I was going to school at Florida State. So I found myself at his studio learning how to use music technology, use software like Acid Pro. And
sure, that
was kind of like my gateway drug, as I say.
Right.
My gateway drug was Acid Pro. And so I started using that and got into other softwares, and then really started with softwares, and then came back around and learned hardware stuff when I could afford to buy it.
Right.
But really just started trying to play violin over electronic music, and then trying to make my own music, and then moved to LA and started working at M Audio and doing tech support there. And there's a little known software program at the time called Ableton Live that was being distributed with every keyboard, every sound card. You remember those days,
right? Yeah, the little green envelope inside of every M Audio keyboard. That's right.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant. So we were getting these phone calls about this Ableton program. I mean, no one could pronounce it, and at first we were like, okay, well, I don't know how to use this program. And I was like, well, I guess we should learn how to use this program because people are calling and wondering about it. So I started learning how to use it, and I fell in love. I thought it was just the most amazing software that I had ever used, and I was performing at that time. And so I just fell in love with it. And a couple of years later, Ableton decided to do their own distribution and stop putting the little green envelopes in every box and start selling it themselves. And they asked me to come and work at the company. So I was actually one of only a few people that was working at Ableton at the time in the US. And so just kind of from there, became certified, started touring, worked with all these different artists and built my company. And but it was really just the core was just being a violinist and just loving music and just loving to learn, really.
So, but I have to tell you, Laura, there sounds like a great big missing link in there. kind of saying, going from M Audio tech support, talking about the Ableton, to, putting together, working with Cirque du Soleil or touring with Kanye West. I mean, there's something in between there.
There is, okay. I was like, well, how long? I mean, I could break it down even further, but so Yeah, I mean, around so 2007, I was working at Ableton, just from M Audio. I was the first West Coast product specialist, so I was living in LA. I was working remotely. The office was in New York at the time, and
Right.
I was going around and doing all the demos at NAMM and Guitar Center and all the stores, just doing a lot of demonstrations. 2008 hit, and of course, that was not a very good year for our economy.
Right.
And, they said, hey, we're restructuring the company, so we have to lay you off. And I was like, oh, geez, but I thought I was the top salesperson and I thought I was doing great. And they're like, you are doing great. It's nothing personal. It's just we're restructuring the company. So they said, well, since, you've been helping us develop the certification program, we'll make you our first certified trainer. And yeah, so at the time, that didn't really mean much. It was like, okay, well, great. Okay, but what about my health insurance,
Right.
But, from there, I mean, I went on unemployment and very quickly just, I had developed so many relationships with companies through going to NAMM and doing these demonstrations. Pretty soon, companies started asking me to be their rep. And I, of course, was still working with Ableton, doing demos and things like that, just not full time. And so I started my first company called Evo Tech Audio then, and was just going around and doing demos and doing sales and just getting people interested in the products. And it was a lot of different software products like F Expansion and Rob Pappen and things like that. And so in 2009, I got a call from a salesperson who said, hey, I met this guy. He's Kanye West's engineer. Do you want to go hang out with him? And I said, sure, I'll go hang out with him. So I ended up meeting this engineer, Anthony Kilhofer, and doing some sessions with him because they were trying to convert their live set over to Ableton, and just developed a really good relationship with him. And he said, hey, do you want to go on this tour? And I said, well, I can't because Cirque du Soleil had contacted me about doing this show in Las Vegas. So I ended up going to Las Vegas for 4 months and lived on the Strip and worked on the Cirque du Soleil show. So I really just kind of fell into the live show programming and playback stuff because they were looking for someone who was an expert in Ableton Live, and I was that expert.
You were that person, right? Well, that's really interesting. That was such an interesting time because people were pretty rapidly moving away from hardware solutions and moving to software solutions, right? And so, you kind of having the skills put you in kind of the catbird seat for that. When you would go to work with somebody like Kanye or Cirque du Soleil for that matter, and they were trying to put together a live set, what were they trying to accomplish that was different than what they were doing before?
Well, really, it's just about flexibility. It's with artists like those two. I mean, other artists, it's a little bit more straightforward. But so, for instance, with Cirque du Soleil, they've got this massive production with hundreds of people working on it, and the show doesn't go the same way every night, right? So if there's a trick that's they don't make, that they fail at doing, they might retry the trick, or something doesn't move at the time that it's supposed to move, like automation. You might have to skip to another song or another section of a scene, or you might need to loop something because they need more time, something got stuck. So there's all these kind of clauses with a show like that you need to be prepared for. You need to be prepared to fade out right away, not stop it abruptly if someone tells you to do something like that. So really it's just programming the show in a way to offer all of these options to whoever is operating the show. And yeah,
I think a lot of people, when they see these shows in action, they don't recognize the fact that there has to be all of these variables in play, because sometimes the hydraulic arm just doesn't work, and you have to be able to be fast enough on your feet to be able to keep the show seeming to run seamlessly, even when things are falling apart in the background, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very complex, and people think, oh, it's just some music being played back. And meanwhile, I stayed up for 3 days not sleeping at the very beginning of that because I was doing so much programming. But it's definitely a lot. It's a brain twister. It's a brain teaser as well because they'll ask you to do certain things. Like, for instance, with the Elvis show I was working on, this music wasn't recorded to a click. So when they say, well, we got to loop this section and you don't want to tinker with that original music, you got to figure out really creative ways to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really like every show is different. Every artist or every musical director has some different kind of demand or different ways they want to do it. And you just have to figure out a solution, and there's no like, oh no, we can't do that. It's like, yes, I will find out how to
I'll
do
find
that
a
for
way.
you. Yeah.
Right. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hmm.
Now, when you're working with like musical groups that are doing shows and stuff, do you find that they're trying to replicate their comfort studio when they go on the road, or do people really make gig specific rigs? I'm trying to think,
Hmm.
like, when you set up, I don't know, pick whatever group you work with, but you set them up, are they trying to basically take their home studio or their preferred studio setup on the road with them, or are they trying to just like maximize the efficiency of doing this particular gig?
I think it definitely depends. I think, yeah, it really just depends on the artist. But I think a lot of younger artists, especially in the pop world, they just want their music to sound like the record. And
Oh,
they don't,
right.
and so it's just, it's a lot of tracks, it's a lot of playback. Then other artists that are a little bit more established or a little bit more creative, musical directors that want to do a little bit more, that's where it gets more interesting, and there's more gear on stage, and
Right.
bigger bands and things like that. And I think initially a lot of acts, a lot of artists will want to recreate a studio kind of setting because they think that's all they know. Like they've
Mhm.
never done a live show,
That's
so they
what
bring
got
out
them the hit, right?
exactly. So they bring out all this gear from the studio that it doesn't necessarily work for live. They bring their studio engineer out, who doesn't know about how to program a show for live, and I see that all the time. It's like people want their studio engineers out there on the road, and the studio engineer gets out there and is like, wow, I really don't know how to make this happen live. It's a completely different skill set. And there's some crossover, but it is very different. So, it really just does depend on the artist and, the kind of vibe they're going for. Now, there are certain artists that want that studio feeling on stage with them. They've got all the racks and all the gear, and that stuff gets very expensive, especially when you're doing fly dates. Like if you're on a tour and you've got a tour bus and you've got a truck and the whole thing, then it's fine. But it gets very expensive to add more and more gear and more equipment on stage. So it's like nice to strike a balance between having it be light, streamlined, road ready, not breakable, very tough, good cases, things like that, and your creativity. And there's a way, and we find the balance in between that for artists.
Yeah, I'm guessing that sort of ends up being a big part of like your consultation is talking them
Mm-hmm.
through the process of what do you need on stage to be artistically comfortable? Because
Yep.
let's face it, sometimes that gear, specific pieces of gear exist just because that's your comfort zone, right? It's either a
Mm-hmm.
favorite guitar or a favorite key bed, or I just happen to like this cymbal, or this microphone always makes me sound great, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those things are just very much like the things that make you relax and be able to have a great performance. And so I
Mm-hmm.
imagine that you have to go through a fair bit of like counseling to suss out what those pieces are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a combination of education and counseling for sure.
Mhm.
Especially with teams, it's oftentimes the artist has a new team, especially they're starting out, and everyone's trying to figure out what this is, like what we actually do. I mean, people think, well, why do we need a playback engineer or a
Right.
programmer?
Right.
And it really just comes down to when an artist is moving beyond a 2-track, right? When an artist is moving beyond having a DJ on stage with Serato, when an artist wants to have a band and they want to be able to hear different things in their in-ears, they start using in-ears. They want to create different transitions from songs. They want to play different types of medleys night after night. They want to switch it up and play different remixes, or they want to pitch things up because their voice is doing better one night, or pitch it down. All of those kinds of things they're not able to do with a static DJ 2-track style setup, as well as you can't sync the video and the lighting with that
Right.
setup either.
Right.
So that's where we come in. It's just literally like their right hand, and help them to create what they're hearing in their head.
Sure.
And it's an important, very important position, because have to be technical, but then we also have to be creative and musical at the same time and have great communication. I think most of what it is 95% communication, I say.
Right. I'm curious, you would have had to learn about 5 million things to get to be effective at the things that you're able to bring to the table, right? What was the hardest for you, given your background as a musician and kind of learning the technology kind of through by passionately being involved and digging in deep into it? Once you started working on big shows and stuff, what was the thing that was hardest for you to latch on to or get used to or get control of?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, just emotionally, first of all, it's very draining, and it takes its toll. And when you don't have a proper place to sleep night after night, and you're not sleeping well, and you have the stress of doing these big shows, it's really, it's kind of a lot.
Right.
I would say probably just dealing with all of the politics of an artist crew and teams, because, I worked with various artists and they've got a vision. Their manager has a vision, the musical director has a vision, the lighting designer has a vision.
Of course, right.
Everyone's got a different vision. And if they're not all on the same page about the vision, then the show can really get screwed up.
Right.
And the communication, because all these people are kind of talking one-on-one and not everyone's in the same room, and just a lot of miscommunication could happen. I mean, I just remember doing shows and being told 3 different things from 3 different people. And it's like, well, who is who is correct here?
Who's got their hands on the wheel?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's just the leadership thing, that just a lot of people kind of are in and out and have got brilliant ideas and pop in and, tend to just screw things up for the rest of us. I mean, I just remember being at Glastonbury, getting ready to do a show with Kanye, the biggest, festival show in the world.
Right.
And people coming in right before the show, oh, you should change this, you should do this, you should do this. It's like,
shut up, go away.
Right. It's like that's where the stress comes from. It's
right.
like, well, you try to plan as much as possible. You try to get everyone on the same page as much as possible. And I felt like I was really good at that, because I feel like I'm good at communicating.
Right.
And I would try to get everyone in the room and discuss, okay, like, this is the plan. This is the set list. This is what we're doing. And then to have some random person come in and just throw it all away is just infuriating.
Yeah, right. They throw a grenade in the middle of the room and you're supposed to say thank you, right? That's so interesting.
Because they don't realize what it takes to make even small changes like that, like at the last minute when the show is about to go on. It's, near impossible to make all of the edits and to make all the changes and have the guest artists come on stage and be able to take their verse out of the song, or their chorus out of the song, or take their guitar out of the song, or change the format of the song. I mean, it's a lot,
Yeah,
it's definitely a lot.
of course, of course.
Yeah. But fun at the same time. I mean, I live for it. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
just pulling it off. I mean, when you're done, it's just the greatest feeling in the world because you're like, wow, I just did that. I rose to the occasion and made that happen, and it's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling.
yeah, that's awesome. Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting, you mentioned before about putting together some online educational efforts, and one of the things you
Mm-hmm.
talked about particularly is the transmute thing, which
Mm-hmm.
on your website it's identified as the transmute accelerator. What it looks like is it's an opportunity for you to work with small groups. Now, is that particularly focused on putting together uh, a performance environment or a performance setup, or what is the specific focus of what you're doing with that effort?
Mm. Yeah. So with my company, Electronic Creatives, we've got our master track program, which is live in person. That's for people
Okay,
to learn how to do playback engineering. And so
okay,
that's, behind the
that's that behind the
scenes,
scenes thing, right? Right.
more technical. And the other side of me is the artist that does the performances and the violin and all the crazy technology. And so a few years ago, I had the idea to host a retreat, and I called it the Transmute Retreat. And it was a week-long program in Florida, and people flew in, and we all worked on our live shows, and we did a lot of yoga and meditation. It was
Mm-hmm.
super fun, and then from there, I had so many people asking me to work with them. And I thought, well, why don't I just create an online program for live performance and just open it up to anyone in the world?
Right.
And so we launched it last year. We've had two iterations of it, and we're actually getting ready to launch the third one in May.
Okay.
And basically, it's like a 2-month intensive live show design course with me. And with me and 10 to 15 other amazing artists from around the world. So it's a very intimate atmosphere. It's basically every little tiny tip and trick that I've learned throughout my years. I've put it in this course. It's just a lot of stuff. And we go through envisioning your show to designing your show, working with the technology, doing tech support on your show, building out your stage plots and your writers, to actually performing online. So we do online performances, and we give feedback and critique you during your performances online. So yeah, it's been a really cool program, and I've had people from Singapore and Australia and Slovenia and Barcelona, and just a lot of people from the U.S., of course, and just
Mm-hmm.
it's been a really great outlet for me to share my knowledge and share what I've learned over the past really 20 years of performing and doing this.
So, what I'm curious about though is, I'll make a joke here, but please
Okay.
bear with me. I mean,
Okay.
how would you not just say, okay, step one is learn to play the violin. Step two is meet George Clinton's son and get into the
Right.
studio. How do you work with people and help them like maximize their stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, so I want people to be able to take the shortcut, right? I don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to have to go back to,
Right.
because for me, I was figuring it out along the way, and I'm largely self-taught. So I wanted to provide a shortcut for people to learn what I've amassed in a shorter period of time and to really get out there and start performing. And that was just what I envisioned with the program. So I mean, yes, obviously having the background in an instrument or
Mm-hmm.
voice or something like that definitely helps. It's not required to do the program. But it's really just every individual has got their own unique spin on live performance and what they want to achieve with it. And we just help them step by step through the process. And I mean, it's incredible to see what artists their shows look like at the end of the 2 months. We've had some well-known film composers that have taken Transmute, and we've had some incredible artists that are just really blossoming and out there performing, and now doing a lot of online performances as well. So
Yeah, right.
it's very cool. Yeah, it's very cool to see where people were at the beginning of the 2 months versus the end.
Well, it's kind of interesting you talk about it being shortcuts, because what it sounds to me is you're trying to help people to maybe have fewer stumbles than you had to go through in your process, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a lot of trial and error,
Right.
and just a lot of figuring things out on my own. And in Transmute, I very clearly lay out, okay, if you want to do this, then watch this, watch me do this, and try it on your own. And now I'll hold your hand and we'll walk you through it.
Well, I also think that there's something valuable about this, particularly in talking about live performance, because I think it's actually pretty difficult to get good feedback on your live performance, because
Mm-hmm.
your friends will want to make you feel good about the performance you just gave.
Mm-hmm.
People who are like your kind of quote fans are going to be like, are going to feel like, well, that's something I could never do. And so that's really cool what you did there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And getting sort of like a critical view and saying, you never actually look at the audience. And so it kind of is a little off putting. Right. Or,
Mm-hmm.
or you look like you're more interested in the E flat key than you are in the fact that there's people watching you perform, right? These kind
Mm-hmm.
of things are the kind of feedback that most you won't get just by kind of like shooting it out there and then seeing what your friends will say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most people are just like, yeah, that was great. And
Yeah.
they don't really look.
Nice.
I
That's
think,
cool. I could never do that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think, it's my goal to really help people get out of the laptop, get their faces out of the laptop, and have it become muscle memory to be able to perform their instruments and controllers and be able to engage with the audience and not have a karaoke show. Just because I've
Right.
seen so many instrumentalists and performers, they're pressing play and they're singing over their lead vocals, or they're singing over a mix that doesn't sound good, and they don't give the front of house engineer the ability to control the different levels, and so it sounds muddy. And so there's just all different ways that you can, just little tweaks that you could do to improve your performance. But really, my goal is to help artists to be able to express themselves in any way that they want to on stage, and using technology or not.
Right. Well, it now
Mm-hmm.
seems like kind of a good time to kind of hone some of those skills,
Right.
because we could just like sort of put the Oprah Winfrey show away for a little while and work on work on your performance work. It seems like a good time to kind of get some of that
Yeah.
stuff pulled together, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. And, in this time, we're adding a lot of content based around live streaming and performing live in your own studio at your
Mm-hmm.
own home, and just really putting a lot more content around where we're at right now in this time in our lives. I mean, we will be able to perform again in the future out in the world, but for now, we're here. So, we've got a lot of content around that. And yeah, so it's a fun group. It's definitely great, and I really enjoy facilitating it and teaching it.
Cool. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. But before I let you go, why don't you
Yeah.
fill people in on where to go to learn more about some of these educational opportunities you have, as well as where people can go to see more of your performance recordings.
Oh, amazing! Wow, this has been so great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I'm a lot on Instagram at Laura Escudé, and on YouTube, just by my name on YouTube as well. Facebook, all the places, but I do have a lot of stuff on Instagram and YouTube. And the Transmute Accelerator is, the transmuteaccelerator.com. So all the information about the program is there. And we are launching that in May. May 4th. And we have got some openings for people that would like to join us. So doing that, and just doing a lot of master classes and things. So if you want to check out my website under the events page, there's a lot of replays of stuff that I've done and upcoming events things that I am doing in the next couple of weeks.
Right. And you're pretty active on social media, so I'm sure people can track you down and kind of catch what you're up to there as well. So that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I encourage anyone to, shoot me a message if you have a question about something that I'm doing or want some more information.
That's fantastic. Well, Laura, I want to thank you so much for your time and let you have the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, darling. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks to Laura for the great chat. Frankly, for you listeners who've been with me for a while, you can imagine that when I get an opportunity to talk to somebody that I've known for a while and I still learn a lot about their lives, that's a kind of a really neat addition to what I do. And I hope that you enjoyed it as well. I want to thank you for continuing to listen. I want to thank the people. We got a number of new supporters over on Patreon this week. I really do appreciate that. For people who have expressed some concern, I am getting way better now. I finally was able to see a doctor, and I got diagnosed as having pneumonia, and they gave me some horse medication, and I'm better now. So thank you, everybody who's reached out on that. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, or concern, drop me a line. ddg@cycling74.com, darwin.gross@gmail.com, ddg@20objects.com. All those will work. And beyond that, I am going to let you all have a great week. I will catch you next time around. Bye.